So I'm going to be very honest, guys. When I read a poem and then I look up at the top of the piece and there's either nothing or it says untitled, I get a little bit frustrated because I feel like titles are one of the easiest ways to inform your reader about what's about to happen. I forget who penned it, but there's this idea of when you're writing a poem, at the beginning of the poem, it's very much like stepping into a boat. You have no idea if this boat is going to support your weight. You don't know where this boat's going to take you. You don't know if there's a hole. Like, you have no idea about this boat. So you're really putting a lot of trust into the writer or the poet, the author, whoever it is that wrote the piece. Titles are one of your tools that you can use that can immediately add a layer of comfort and preparation. You don't have to give everything away, but they can really start opening up the world that your reader is about to enter. And so today, in fine print, by the way, hello, my name is Jeff. This is Fine Print. This is our Sunday show where we take a look at a poem you've written and we analyze it. This is not a workshop. We're not here to, talk about things that are working, things that aren't working. We're just here to kind of give a first impression of what it's like encountering the poem and things that stick out to us. And one of the things we're going to be focusing on today is we're really going to be focusing on the poem, but then we're also going to be focusing on what is happening inside of it, guided by the title. So this is a piece that we're going to be working on today. This is a piece by Alisa Hartley. My apologies if I mispronounce your name. This piece is titled, "The Plan Was to Have Dinner Before the Drugs Kicked In." Let's take a look at the poem first. We stick the paper spaceship under our tongues and laugh the whole way to the kitchen. The potatoes and peas float on their plate. I look to you across the table. Two black saucer pupils spin back at me. My mother sits at the head of the table, a world away. I don't dare look up. My hand swoops from the trident of Neptune, bulldozes into the hill of mashed potatoes. Terra forma. I know the next step is to open my mouth and insert the dirt. I look for your smile, as big as the table. I freeze this moment. Laughter volcanoes from our teeth, from our toes. What's so funny, you two? Asks someone in the sky. Again, thank you to Alisa Hartley for allowing us to dive into this piece, for sending it to us for us to take a look at. One little thing, just to note, I'm forgetting all my people who said quotes, but there's this idea that words are currency, and that every time you repeat a word, it kind of loses a little bit of its value. And one of the things I noticed was that the word table appears several times. Just a note. And again, if it's not an issue for you, it's not an issue for me, but it is something that I noticed is that we have a lot of repetitions. So like table here. Where was the other one? The table here. And then table here. That's a lot. It's not a particularly long piece. Not a long piece, so that's a lot of repetition in a relatively short amount of time. But going back to our main point here, how does this poem change if we don't have the title? This poem's untitled. If it's not even there, like if we're looking at this, just imagine. I know sometimes it could be hard to imagine. So if we just took all this out, it would still be a very trippy experience. I won't deny that. However, by adding the title here, it colors everything that happens afterwards in such a way. It adds some intention, it adds some backdrop. You don't necessarily have to use the title to add backdrop, but I think that's one strategy you can use with titles is think about, what happens before this moment? What is the reason why this moment's even happening? Or maybe what's going to happen after? Okay, so when we start by saying, the plan was this, and even just starting with the plan was something. what does that imply when you start by saying, the plan was to do this? That implies that something's going to go wrong. So then, from a reader's perspective, I'm going to spend time trying to find out where things are going wrong, and it kind of just prepares me for that a lot. So I think this title is doing a lot of work. It prepares me for also just kind of the sort of surreal, fantastic sort of images that appear afterwards during the piece. Um, and also implies it lets me know other things too, like for instance by having the we. So now I know that, okay, so we have multiple people that are involved in this process. The plan was to have it before the drugs kicked in. Sorry, I thought I read the we in the title, but even in the poem, that's helpful too. I think also just the plan, because usually it feels like there's a communal sort of effort kind of going on here. Also, some other things it's doing. I mean, it's setting up time. In terms of we're in evening somewhere. To have dinner before, so like there's also, I feel like there's some sort of value being placed on dinner because we didn't intend for the drugs to kick in at that time. So we were almost like dinner was like this, like maybe pushing it too far, but dinner is almost like taking on like this kind of like sacred aspects. Like, oh, we don't normally want to do drugs for the dinner; they'll come in after. So those are just some things that kind of come in with the title that I think are really helping it to do work, and I really like. But let me know your thoughts as well, of some things that you see going on with the title. Moving on, so let's kind of dig into the poem itself to a degree. We stick to paper spaceship. So that first line works a lot more when I know what the title is, because paper spaceship, I've never heard of that. Granted, look, I ain't much of a drinker. I ain't much of a user of different substances and things like that. So I ain't up to date on all the terms. I've never heard paper spaceship before. That's a new one for me. So the title helps out. I mean, I would get there. I think the poem has enough cues to kind of get me there, but I'm there more immediately. And I think sometimes as a writer or poets, we lean to the cryptic instead of the clarity, and this helps out a lot. So again, we mentioned earlier about that aspect of entering a poem and feeling grounded. I feel much more grounded. We stick to paper spaceship. Intriguing first line. Under our tongues and laugh. One thing I'm noticing that my connection is kind of spotty. What I'm going to try to do, it might work, it might not work. I'm going to try restarting my computer to see if that helps. So if you can just give me one moment. In the meantime, you can watch this old interview we did, and I'll be right back.
Facts are important, but like emotional truth that poets get at is the most exciting and like maybe the most truthful.
When I read it in this space, when I bring it to this audience, why do I want to do that today, here, now? Something I think I'm doing a lot in my work is giving a certain amount to be able to see where this boat is going and where the waters are taking it, but not trying to paint the full landscape. Not only because I don't want to share it, but because I don't know if even I want to go there yet myself. So I'm wondering how you handle that, and if it's scary at any points for you, or how you deal with that scariness.
Yeah. Well, first, so do you feel that way about Cruel? God,
yeah. I mean, a very common reflection I get from my work is, people are like, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I feel a lot of things. And that's kind of a lot of just my passion in art. Like, I don't always want to know exactly what's going on, but when I apply it personally, and I'm willing to approach what I'm willing to approach in the manner of which, or the manner and depth in which I'm willing to go into it, And and we talked about this too, it's a long game of poetry, right? Things I'm tapping into now with Cruel, I surely will keep writing about, and surely I hope that not that I'll reveal more, but that I'll discover more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I recognize. I asked because I feel like I recognize that in the book, but there was an intentionality behind it. I'm thinking of a specific moment that I marked. This stood out to me when I was reading. You said, "I offer a puzzle that will madden you, but your ego feeds differently." I liked that itself as an offering of the text as a puzzle and as an offering, because I think even if there is distance that you're feeling and some fears about sort of, is this text going far enough? I don't know. I think there's something useful in that navigation, and then you being honest about that navigation on the page. Right? I think poetry is exciting because it's poets thinking about how do we approximate different truths on the page, and I think poetry can do that in a way that no other genre can. The reason I stray away from nonfiction when I do stray away from it is because facts are important, but like emotional truth that poets get at is the most exciting and like maybe the most truthful.
Sure.
But yeah, so for my manuscript for
Hey, thanks for hanging around. My apologies again for that delay. I'm going to load up our poem again. Maybe that'll help with the connection or not. Maybe not. Maybe it's just not my day. Okay, the poem once more. And as we go through this, I do hope that you guys share your thoughts as well, because we are digging into this piece together. I've only run through the poem a couple of times, so it's fresh for everybody. So I would love to know your own initial reactions to things that you see. Let's go on. So we mentioned we stick the paper spaceship under our tongues and laugh. There's almost like this, like, first of all, in some ways it's almost this, I think when you have this sense of like a forbidden thing, especially something that's ingested, you almost kind of harken back again to like Adam and Eve, Genesis, biblical sorts of things, and there's this sense of complicitness, like we're both in this together. I offer you the apple, you also take a bite kind of thing. Especially with like the under our tongues, almost like this like hidden thing. This isn't out in the open. We're trying to keep this kind of secret. But kind of not too, right? Laugh the whole way to the kitchen. It almost feels like a, bad guy revealing their plan to you, like, ha ha ha, ha, you can't escape because we're about to do this and things like that, like in a show. The whole way to the kitchen also kind of implies that maybe they're kind of distant from the kitchen. Maybe they're like upstairs or something. So, what I think is interesting is the immediacy of the drugs as well. So the first stanza, there's still kind of like the logic and like coherency, although like paper spaceship is immediately kind of putting us into a different plane in a way. But then immediately in the second stanza, we're hit with things that begin again kind of edging towards the fantastic, right? Potatoes and peas floating on their plate. It's like, oh my God, this is like, we're in it right now. So I think from a reader's perspective, that's something I wasn't quite expecting. I was expecting something that was going to devolve more, but maybe that's really fitting because the plan was to do this, and instead we're here right now. It's like, oh, okay, we're getting hit immediately. I like kind of the mundane kind of just potatoes and peas. Not to knock anyone that's a potato or pea fan, but we're picking some kind of like mundane vegetables for a lot of places. And then the float is interesting, having float that's in that same line above. Again, kind of putting us there. So it's also interesting too with the word choice. We're getting some extended metaphor, just reliance on space imagery, the lack of gravity, spaceship, floating. Saucer, like flying saucer. Two black saucer pupils spin back at me. So I like that we're kind of extending that metaphor, and that's something I would encourage you to. Is like it's hard to do this on the first draft, but like once you have the first draft done, kind of reading through it and being like, oh, I see that I'm using this image or this sort of image, like a lot of, like sea theme or space theme or fire theme. What are some ways we can even amplify that or magnify it? So I think that's something that the piece is leaning into really well throughout. There may even be opportunities to dig even more into it. Like, are there more space things we could tie in? Um, I look to you across the table, two black saucer pupils spin back at me. Spin is a great word there. I think it kind of highlights the madness that's occurring and about to happen. I like also that so this is the stanza where things are really starting to um, ramp up kind of immediately from the first stanza. Also, Alicia's back. We're an inside joke between the reader and the words. Facts. I don't disagree. Yeah, there is this kind of relationship again between the speaker and the reader. I think going on. Also, that also happens when you have you in a piece. You know, that's something that also occurs. I'm bringing you into the poem as well. You're with me, the reader. I mean, the speaker talking to us, and we are the ones with pupils spinning like that. So one of the things I like is this contrast between the second stanza and the third stanza. Because the second stanza, again, we're introduced to the effects, but then the third stanza, there's almost this grounding that occurs. My mother immediately, so we have the authority figure kind of thinking. So now we're getting an idea about why maybe the plan was to not have this happen at dinner. Maybe depending on the relationship with the mom. My mother sits at the head. I like that. Also, just like the sense of like logic and things like that, um, versus what's happening to everyone else. At the head of the table, a world away. So we're again tying into space imagery, but also the kind of like mental space as well. Difference between the speaker and um, this mom figure. But the other thing I think is really working well is the contrast. So the second stanza has those longer lines, especially underplay. I look to you across the table too, black saucer, like those. So we had these really long lines, and then we kind of move down again to the grounding, which these shorter lines. And it's starting off with the mother, in the world away, and then we're seeing also some control here. So there are a lot of things happening that we don't control. From that second stanza and even the third to a degree. So what does the speaker do? Have some control. They have control over where they look and gaze. A lot of attention being paid to eyes, right? Like I look to you in that second stanza. Two black saucer pupils. Again, eye images. I don't dare look up. I don't know what to make of that just yet, but there's definitely a lot of attention being paid to observation and eyes and vision. The next one, my hand swoops for the trident of Neptune. Yeah, the trident kind of threw me off. So okay, I'm guessing fork. But then Neptune took me back. I mean, you have your god and then space. I guess I was expecting something that was going to be space, space, space. But then trident kind of threw me out. But then Neptune kind of pulled me back, and I think that makes sense with trident for fork. Okay. Bulldozes into the hill of mashed potatoes. Hills might be an opportunity for more space stuff. My hand swoops for the trident of Neptune. Bulldozes into the hill of mashed potatoes. Slightly, I don't want to say confused, but originally it was just the potatoes and peas, and now we have mashed potatoes. I don't know, something I'm like, because originally I wasn't imagining the mash, and now I'm imagining mash. Or maybe we have mash. Maybe we just have a very carb centric, it's a very, very starchy dinner we have regular potatoes and we got mashed potatoes going on. I like the idea of using bulldoze with the hill. Although, again, something from a reader's perspective, I was expecting was probably, again, something more spacey. But maybe that's tied in with the next line, like terra forma. maybe like it's just like transforming worlds. That's interesting too. That Terraforma gets its own line. I might have to come back to that once we finish the poem, but I would love to know your guys' thoughts right now. Terraforma getting its own line, one word, one line, stanza. What's that doing for you? Moving on from there, I know the next step is to open my mouth and insert the dirt. I look for, so I'm guessing the dirt is a reference back to the hill, the mashed potatoes. I know the next step. It's kind of interesting. So this stanza, now we're going away from the. Before everything was very kind of like chronological and like listing and like very narrative heavy, right? Like we did this, we stuck it on our tongues. The peas are floating. I look to you. My mother, she's sitting over there. My hand swoops. Terraforma. This next line, though, is now we're getting very more introspective, right? And I'm just curious as to why the break. What is that doing? That between the Terraforma and then that also switch to introspection suggests that this is the turn, but I don't know what's changing enough. And then we get more looking, right? I look for, so that's another phrase that appears a lot. We mentioned that table appears a lot. Look and look up appears a lot, and look for. I look for your smile as big as the table. I freeze this moment. Interesting. Why? Laughter, volcanoes from our teeth, from our toes. It was interesting that the image extended from our teeth, from our toes. I was expecting it just to stop at teeth. Maybe because there's no other moment in the piece where an image is extended. Usually, once it's said, it just is over. But this one extended. And maybe that harkens back to the volcano aspect, and like kind of like the build up from lower to higher. And then we end with the quote: "What's so funny, you two?" asks someone in the sky. So again, we see. I'm guessing that's just based on the characters that we have in the piece. I'm guessing that's the mom, but the mom has become disembodied. Again, almost, for a poem that has a lot of space things, there's also a lot of mythology and almost like God's qualities, like someone in the sky aspect, like the voice from above, the voice on high. And the mom, it's interesting the relationship with the mom. Because the mom is given it seems to me, a lot of authority. The mom, it's not even just my mom, it's my mother. They're at the head. It's implied they're the reason that the speaker doesn't look up. It's implied, I think, at the end that they're the voice, of kind of, again, the voice in the sky, which again kind of has a religious aspect, I feel, like kind of godlike. So there's a lot of weight being put onto the mom. So it's kind of interesting to see the relationship between that. And I wonder if that is a tension that could even be played out. Because one of the things, so the thing for me is we have this turn that for me is right around the Terraforma section. That's where things kind of shift a lot. Well, not, I say it's not, I guess my thing is actually not really shifting a lot. I don't know what the central tension of the poem is. Based on what I'm seeing here, I'm guessing it's between the relationship between the speaker and the mom. I'm guessing in this scene. But I don't know what's at stake. That's the thing. I don't know what's at stake for the speaker. So I know that, the plan was for this to happen. The plan seems to not be working because immediately from the first stanza, they are, or from the second stanza, they're having dinner and the drugs are definitely kicking in. But then it's like, it kind of just feels like, oh no, like we didn't intend for this to happen. The plan was to have the drugs kick in later, but they kicked in earlier. Oh no. So what? I don't know what the implications are, and it's kind of hinted at by like the mom and how the characters are acting around the mom, but I don't know what's at stake. Like when we get this line, like what's so funny, you two? As someone in the sky, like I don't. What's the punishment? Why did they? Why was the plan to do this and not have the drugs kick in at dinner? Why is that such a bad thing? Because right now it doesn't. It's just oh well, I guess we'll just be goofy at dinner and kind of look at each other and laugh a lot. Like that's okay. You know what I mean? So like I see the turn. I see possibilities for tension with the relationship, but at the moment I'm not fully understanding what's going on, or why I should view this moment as something really impactful. Also, for instance, because the speaker does, the speaker specifically says, "I freeze this moment." And so one of the things I'm kind of asking is, well, why is this moment for the speakers such that they want to remember this, or it's really in their head for so long? Because I don't get that. Um, Structurally, something we didn't do, we kind of did, but not directly, is always like giving pieces an eye test. So one of the things we're seeing 3 line stanza, 3 line stanza. Though the line breaks become a lot more irregular, or line lengths. 3 line stanza, 3 line stanza, 1 line, then 3, then 2, and then 1 again. Okay, so we have the break at the end. I guess just a further separation, something that the last line does. Ask someone in the sky, like it just creates further separation between the voice and the person speaking, creating even more distance and things like that. I guess, which again can kind of tie into again the distance between, if it again is the mom, the distance between the speaker and the mom, it gets even further and further by having that line on its own at the end. Alicia says, I don't dare look up. Makes me ponder about why a speaker creates such distance between the mom. Why does a speaker need drugs to deal with the mom? I want to know more. I wasn't even taking it that, oh, like the speaker needs drugs to deal with the mom. I wasn't taking it that way, but I can't. I mean, maybe. I think, again, and again, as they say, not judging at all. No, not judging at all. I think the central tension to me of the piece is this relationship between the mom and the speaker, because I think that's what is leading to potentially not even wanting the drugs to kick in during dinner, but they are, and it's also the reason why not looking up at the mom, the treating of the mom as like this authority, almost like godlike figure at several moments, but the implications of that, in the Bible. This is a God that can like flood you out, you know what I mean, or burn your city down. I don't know what this mom can do. How is this mom gonna like destroy the speaker's world? What's that? What's that risk here? You know what I mean? And I think that's something I'm kind of fishing for, but I'm not quite getting. I want to go back to the terra forma line, which is interesting in a lot of ways. So just by the idea of terraform, just the idea of like transforming a world, it plays with that bulldozing, but then it's also literally in the poem. I mean, it's the first time that the poem structure, the 3 stanzas, the tercets, was broken. So there's some literal, there's some literal reinforcement there. It's doing what it says to a degree. Although what comes after is again immediately we shift to introspection, but we still maintain the 3 line stanzas, which is it's kind of interesting. So it's like we transform the world, but it's the same world, but it's also kind of different at the same time, which I guess makes sense. I mean, you when you terraform a world, it's still the same world underneath it. It's just kind of more different on the surface level. I don't know. I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are on the word terraform being on its own line. Because always it didn't even need to necessarily even be there, right? It could have gone like bulldozing the hill of mashed potatoes. I know the next step. Like in some ways, that's probably even a more logical um, progression. The terraformer is doing a lot of disruption. Other things that kind of stand out to you, whether you're watching live with us, hello, or if you're watching this on the replay, other things that kind of stand out to you before I kind of just offer my summary. So, just kind of recap some things that we discussed. I think this title is doing a lot of work. I think this title is setting up some framing so that way, from the beginning of the poem, I exactly know where I am and what is occurring. So that way I don't have to spend a whole lot of energy on that. I can instead focus on the actual moment that the poem is portraying. So I appreciate that. I could have probably arrived at the point that the title makes without it, but it speeds up the whole process and really helps grounding. Um, Speaking on terra forma, Lisa says, or the world that was changed, probably internal mental discourse. Yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest shift that I see after is again before Terraformer we're very much into kind of narrative, just like this happened, this happened, this happened, very kind of logical. Whereas after that we get into more of the internal minus speaker, especially like I know the next step. That's a very that I know the next step is a very unusual line in this piece because we don't really have any other moment like that where we get into the speaker's head and what their thought process is. Some other things that we noticed, a lot of like space imagery, which there may even be more opportunities to kind of pull that out even more and extend the metaphor further. So that's another thing that we noticed a lot. But between like, for instance, like spaceship, floating, saucers, what else? A world away, Neptune, terraforming to a degree, and someone in the sky, which also kind of ties in some potential religious things. We noticed again the role of the mother taking on this role of authority, sitting at the head of the table, the speaker showing fear from looking up at them. And there's a lot of kind of like reverence and power being given to the mom, which seems to be the central tension of the piece, but we're not entirely sure the implications of that and why. Other things, kind of again speaking to some of the religiosity of this. So again, we the mom we mentioned kind of taking on a role of authority, but even like godlike figure, kind of like the voice in heaven. What's so funny, you two? The aspect of like Genesis, Adam and Eve, like the taking the spaceship under our tongues and laughing. So the complicit nature of the characters kind of doing something that it seems like they feel like they shouldn't do, doing it anyways. And then also trying to hide it, which is also speaking to, in some ways, that also kind of falls back with the terraformer as well, in terms of like, you leaving like, the perfect like Garden of Eden to go to like another world where where there's a lot of work involved and things like that. Other things, yeah, I feel like those were kind of the main thing. Oh, well, I was gonna say, with the religiosity aspect too, is so we're also dealing with 3-line stanzas. So you have these tercets. A lot of times, tercets are used to demonstrate imbalance because, a pair would be like like couplets, like 2, but then adding that third wheel, suddenly things kind of shifting, and but also 3 being a very religious number as well. They're just taking us back to the first line. I didn't understand the first line to explain it. So paper airplanes aren't a metaphor. I'm taking the paper airplanes as the drugs. They are the drugs. That's how I'm taking that. Because they're taking us off to a whole new world. Or paper spaceship, excuse me. Yeah, so the paper spaceship, we stick the paper spaceship under our tongues. I don't know the role of the paper aspect, but that just might be a reference that not being in that world, I'm just going to miss. But I'm just interpreting stick the paper spaceship under our tongues. That seems to be some sort of substance. Yeah. So then going back again to the line lengths, again, 3 being a number of imbalance, also a pretty religious number. So then we also get like the 1 line. So that suddenly showing the shift in the relationship, leaving us alone. And then we also get the couplet, again, followed by the single line. So the single line, the last line that we're given, again, also being something that stands out as someone in the sky. So we're really isolating the one, so like the one figure, the one authority figure, they're on their own, separate in the sky. Again, God like. Separated from the other, separated from the couplet, from our toes. What's so funny, you two? So that stanza, that couplet, that's the two, I'm guessing. So there's the speaker and the other person, right? So there's 2 of them, and they are literally separated from the person. So it's literally like Adam and Eve being separated, like from God, to a degree, at the end, or 2 people separated from the authority figure, however you want to see it. So some interesting things going on with the line breaks. All right, guys, that's just some quick analysis. Again, this is just a very light first reading. If there are things that occurred here that I did not mention or are standing out to you, would love to hear it. Thank you once more to Alisa Hartley, for letting us check out your work. If you want to see more poems by them, I encourage you to find them on Threads. That's their handle right up top, at Alisa Hartley. I want to give a special thanks also to Alicia for being with us. I appreciate you. It's been great. Got to see you twice in 2 days. Look at that. So I appreciate you coming out. Guys, let us know your own thoughts if you're watching this in the future. Greatly appreciate hearing them. Look forward to it as well. And also hope you check us out on Tuesday. So again, Tuesdays, right around 9:45 p.m. is when we have the Versus Live, where we talk about a topic related to poetry, craft, business, anything that stands out to us. Once more, my name is Jeff. You guys are watching Fine Print. This is our poetry analysis show every single Sunday. We love looking at your poems. If you have a piece you would like us to check out in the future, you can send it to us. You can send it at theversuspoetry.com. You can message it to us on Instagram or Facebook. Thank you guys so much for your time. Hope you have a good day, good night, good afternoon, and a good week. We'll see you guys later. Take care.